Obviously, this is all relevant to your final assignment. So we're going to talk about it. So until today, we've gone through face-to-face interviews as the main sort of part of interviewing the window. Today we're going to have a look at going to use an email and why they work, why they don't necessarily work, and what are the challenges and some of the things that we need to be understanding, when we are completing such interpreters. So let's start with the foreign one. Obviously, there are a few benefits to them, and they are listed there up on that slide. It's obviously less stressful for those of you who might be a little bit anxious about interviewing.
Rebuilding carbon-rich agricultural soils is the only real productive, permanent solution to taking excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. People are frustrated that scientists and politicians don't see the same opportunities. This year Australia will emit just over 600 million tons of carbon. We can sequester 685 million tons of carbon by increasing soil carbon by 0.5% on only 2% of the farms. If we increased it on all of the farms, we could sequester the whole world's emissions of carbon. I think it's really important for young people not to feel restricted in their choices and also to be aware of the choices that are available to them, and obviously the media has an incredibly important role to play in that, in letting people know the great range of science that is out there and is potentially a career. I think we tend to talk about science as this big kind of monolith, but of course, actually it's this beautiful multifaceted thing. There's almost something for everybody there. There are so many different aspects of it that really attract lots of different types of personality. I think somebody that's going to be attracted to working in biology might be a very different person from somebody who's attracted to engineering. I suppose it's about knowing the breadth of opportunities that are out there, and so anything that universities and broadcast media can do to make sure that those opportunities are visible, I think is really important.
That brings us to the CEO's second duty, building everyone, or more accurately, building the senior team. All the executives report to the CEO, so it's the CEO's job to hire, fire, and manage the executive team. From coaching CEOs, I actually think this is the most important skill of all. Because when a CEO hires an excellent senior team, that team can keep the company running. When a CEO hire a poor senior team, the CEO is up spending all of their time trying to do with the team, and not nearly enough time trying to do with other elements of their job. The senior team can and often does develop the strategy for the company, but ultimately it's always the CEO who has the final go-no-go decision on strategy.
Again, I want to repeat that I don't blame libertarians for this state of affairs. My argument is really that they simply have nothing to offer us in this debate. When we talk about trying to get rid of the welfare policies that have enabled some of the breakdowns of the family, that is undoubtedly important, but I think we're beyond that at this point. The damage is so deep. And it's kind of hard for me to envision a future without Social Security, for instance. I quite agree with the analysis that the Social Security, Medicare and that sort of thing, have decreased the primary functions of the family, but I cannot imagine a world in which we get rid of these things so that we will be, from a pragmatic point of view, we have to think about what we can do to try to bolster up this breakdown that I keep referring to.
Now, because you're having all these cities and all these factories, people are going to move to these cities for work, and you're going to have a lot of different people from different areas in one particular small geographic location. So you're going to be seeing these people interact a lot more than you would in small rural areas. Also, you're going to have housing shortages, crime, lack of jobs, so there's a lot of things that you could observe and test and see. And this is what sociology really takes off as a science.
Lawrence Stephen Lowry RBS Ra was an English artist. Many of his drawings and paintings depict Pendlebury, Lancashire, where he lived and worked for more than 40 years, and also Salford and its surrounding areas. Lowry is famous for painting scenes of life in the industrial districts of northwest England in the mid-20th century. He developed a distinctive style of painting and is best known for his urban landscapes peopled with human figures often referred to as Matchstick Man. He painted mysterious unpopulated landscapes, brooding portraits and the unpublished Marionette works, which were only found after his death.
Experimental psychological research is conducted in a lab under controlled conditions and attempts to rely solely on an application of research methods to understand behavior and mental processes. As an example of a psychological experiment, you might want to investigate people's perceptions of different tones. Specifically, you could ask the following question: is it easier for people to discriminate one pair of tones from another depending on their frequency? To answer this, you would want to disprove the hypothesis that all tones are easy to discriminate. Now we come right out of the woods. Transpiration is the passive process by which water moves from the wetness of the soil up a plant and into the air via the leaves. We've known about it for years and you probably haven't thought about it since school. The assumption is that transpiration works by a wick effect, where the negative pressure of the water in the leaves draws up water from the roots, but until now it has been impossible to replicate this process in the lab. Abraham Strook and Tobias Wheeler from Cornell University in New York have constructed a fake plastic tree that emulates the natural process. I spoke to Abraham Strook and started by asking why synthetic transpiration has been such a tall order.
Animators have used the 3D printer to give characters in the new movie Coraline almost 250,000 facial expressions. The machine prints out objects by depositing layers on top of each other. It can reproduce fine detail, as each layer is just 16 micrometers thick. Stop motion animators made use of it to print a range of heads with different expressions for each character. It's the first time a 3D printer has been used for an animated movie.
Okay, see, the thing is that I've had a look at the peer reviews about the funding application, which you suggested that I do. But what I found is that several reviewers are saying that there isn't actually sufficient focus on my topic. I think that is actually the case, but I remember that the proposal is based on things that have already been done. And the fact that it's just one of a number of factors. And these affect health and safety. I think areas around stress, they cover up much more ground. So I think if you're sort of upfront about it, and you say, look, I need a wider spectrum here. We could perhaps suggest something else to try and measure bullying in the workplace. nutrition expert at the university for what him unknown, say the simple sugar and candy bars can give you a quick boost. But after the initial rush, you usually crush it feel worse than before the snap. They say what you need is complex carbohydrates like a bagel or a bowl of not sugar-coating cereal. Try carrying a variety of pack-size box to work with you and buying a small carton of milk from the vending machine. Carbohydrates help you sustain a blood sugar level that is neither too high nor too low. That means you have a steady flow of energy to finish your day.
No one likes to be spied upon, to have their personal information stolen, or their computers hijacked to become part of what's called a botnet. Botnets are networks of computers that have been infected by viruses called malware. It could happen to you. These hijacked computers are being secretly used without the owner's permission, for criminal and espionage purposes. Botnets are one of the biggest problems in computer security today. One of the scariest examples of computer hacking, as we mentioned, is what's called the GhostNet system, the hijacking of computer networks in the offices of the Dalai Lama and thousands of other computers around the world. Tesla showed that you could make a luxury electric car for a profit. That got the attention of other luxury car makers. Also, government regulations from California and other states that promote electric vehicles. Automakers used to respond to these mandates half-heartedly. They'd build what's called a compliance car. Chelsea Sexton, an industry consultant, an electric vehicle advocate, explains. It is expensive. It's low volume. It's hard to get. It's somehow engineered to be a little bit unattractive in some way, very low range, etc., etc. There are some 250 million cars in America, 250 million cars in the country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there is good news, according to our guests today. And that is we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels and digital technology. And they already exist. So what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guests today will help answer that.